everyone, and welcome to this next in the series of fireside chats from the IMHS Health and Safety Society. Today we're joined by Mark Kutafani and Darren Head. Darren's a frequent visitor. He's going to become one of the all-time favourites on this podcast, whatever we decide to call it. But what we're here to talk about is to really amplify the message of the upcoming International Mine Health and Safety Conference that's happening 5, 6, 7 October in Perth. So it's going to be a pretty impressive event, and Mark, as one of our ambassadors, is a real stalwart for both the Institute and improving health and safety outcomes across the industry. So look, rather than me jump on a soapbox, Mark, do you want to take us away, give a bit of a bio, where you're at, how you've come to be there, and why you're happy to be an ambassador for the conference?
Sure. Thanks, Peter, and hello, Darren. Good to see you again. Look, I've been around the industry for almost 50 years, not quite, but knocking on the door this year of 50. I've worked in coal, hard rock, open cut, underground. I've worked in Canada, South Africa in the deep mines. Obviously Australia, and had responsibilities literally across South America as well. So seen a bit, been lucky to have worked with a lot of wonderful people and learned a lot on the way through, and at 67 still learning. For me, safety always has been close to my heart. I lost a colleague back in Coalcliff mine many years ago, and he was a crossmate, and from that day on, safety was always my first priority in terms of anything I did, either as a miner right the way through to leading Anglo-American. And for me, it's our most important issue. If you can't be trusted to do what you can to look after people, then you can't be trusted to be a leader. So for me, front and centre, and a privilege to be involved, and I'll do whatever I can to help and support the team make a success of the conference.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for that, Mark. And it was a really nice grounded overview of how you came to be here. You got mining in the blood, and certainly that bit where you were amplifying what happens when you're close to a fatality, and particularly if it was your crossmate, it just changes your mindset completely. Now, before we sort of jump into the full round of discussions, Darren, did you want to do a quick pot of bio of yourself and explain your involvement? Because you're also on the committee of the conference, which is great to have you involved, and great to see that energy getting applied to making this the best of all mining safety conferences. Please, Darren.
Thanks, Pete. Yes, I started out life as a geologist many moons ago in Kalgoorlie. Had the privilege of working at the super pit with Mark, and from there went on and got into some nickel work. And that was, I didn't realise it at the time, but that was a significant moment, as being with the WMC and the Elimination of Fatalities Task Force. As a chief geologist, I thought it would be interesting to take on the role as the site champion, which I did, and never really dreamt that a few years later I'd be at Bronzewing when we had the triple fatality. And in retrospect, it was like a serendipitous moment where I ended up going back to uni and moved into health and safety full time, which I've done for the last 20 odd years. The conference, it's very important to me. I reflect on that moment with Hugh Morgan and WMC, and setting that line in the sand where the industry just had to change. And I guess, as we now know, this number of 3.4 fatalities per 100,000 hours worked is again, it's been stagnant for 10 to 15 years now. And again, as an industry, we're at this plateau, and we were just reflecting on the issues facing the industry, and we really can't see how that situation is going to change. And in fact, we can probably see how it could get worse if things don't change and we make some fundamental changes. So this conference, fantastic to be involved. Use it as an opportunity to lever the change that the industry requires into the next 10, 20 years.
Brilliant. Thanks for that, Darren, and thanks for amplifying that conference message. Because look, we had a few ideas as to what we'd run through, but I think this subject really wants unpacking a little bit further. Looking back at where we were at through the late 90s before that step, and I think when you look at it, part of that elimination of fatalities task force, that actually did make the step change because we were in the 20 rather than the 3.4 back in the 90s from memory. So do you think that task force was part of what caused the change? Did it set up the groundswell? So Mark, I know you were intimately involved and did some seminal work in that space. So do you want to reflect on whether that sort of energy in the room can make that difference?
Yeah, I think Darren's made a very good point and was there again when Hugh made the famous speech, the line in the sand, and that we needed to do something very different, put a team of people together that really worked through a whole range of issues around safety, which ultimately came back to hazards, understanding hazards, being very deliberate in the way you manage those types of issues. And as a consequence, it elevated safety to another place in terms of the conversations around safety. And the fact that he demonstrated the leadership also put a very bright light on the leadership of the organisation. So creating expectations, putting the systems and structures into support, and in particular focusing on hazards and deliberate management of hazards. And we had the elimination of fatalities major hazard review as part of those processes. So it was a real sea shift change in the way things were done. And I ended up replicating that learning in South Africa when I was the head of the Chamber of Mines in South Africa. And we also established an elimination of fatalities task force across the industry. And again, similar positive outcomes in terms of the approach. So it's not a bad model to follow, and certainly one where there are many lessons to be learned.
No, thanks for that share, Mark. So I guess what I've been reflecting on and part of my sort of hope and dream for the conference is that what we'll walk away with is every participant, every person who attends the conference is going to walk away with an understanding of what they could potentially do back in their real life to make a difference, some technical knowledge on some ideas that could potentially be implied, but more importantly, they'll make a commitment and hook up with others at the conference to set up sort of accountability partners so that we all leave that conference to evangelize we can make a difference. 3.4 is not acceptable. It has to change. As a group, we can make that change. So we're looking for 500 plus people at the conference, and we need all the right people at the conference so that when they leave, they can get out there and make a difference. And that's not right people, just the tops of organisations. It's also about, say, getting your up and coming leaders, the technical people who are going to support the change. Everything can click together because we've got the right format and the right group of people getting in the room. I mean, the lineup we've got so far in terms of speakers, they're all the leading lights across the Australasian health and safety industry. So it's got the start of a good buzz. So I'm hoping we can be that pebble at the top of the mountain that creates the avalanche. Anyway, Darren, did you want to reflect on those comments Mark shared at all? Like you mentioned Bronzewing, and then that would have triggered your move back into safety. But then how did you take that and apply that moving forward? And are there enduring lessons that we can look to share with people on this fireside chat, but more importantly, when we're together at the conference?
Yeah, look, I think what I really took away from that time was what we look on now as being critical control processes. Pretty evident that some significant events happened and you unpack them. And I've thought now that there, for me, lies the important aspect of safety, and that is to use this 80-20 Pareto principle and concentrate on the 20% of the issues that actually hold 80% of your risk. And when I'm talking about risk, I'm talking about the significant risk that could result in a disabling injury or a fatality. Focusing on that, it then touches on issues of time. We're an industry that demands productivity everyone is time poor. We've got to make sure that the time that we do have is used most wisely and most effectively. And now I guess we now see the importance of the psychosocial aspect of the human person. I think it's been ignored or at least diminished for too long. It does play, in my opinion, it does play an important role, but we've got to understand it in the context of an organisation as well. You can't get too excited about it in the small framework of safety. You've got to see it as a component of the whole system that is a mine. So a bunch of issues in there, Pete, and I think they're all in the conference.
Yeah, no, indeed. What I'm hoping to get Mark in particular to reflect on next is thinking about that complexity piece that you just mentioned in passing, because I know it's something, and in some ways I feel we kind of score an own goal in lots of the losses that we've suffered, in that we haven't found new ways to kill people. I mean, if you look at the last dozen or more fatalities across the industry, none of them are new. Like, none of them were related to new equipment, new process, new anything. We just lost focus. And in my mind, part of that could be because we're complicating things. Like, we've got health and safety management systems at sites that are, when you print them out, they're that thick, and really that the only thing they're good for is hand-to-hand combat. Like, they're not how people do their jobs. It's about, and I guess I don't want to go too far down that track with my thinking. I'd rather hear from Mark, because I know you improved and reduced complexity across all the organisations you've been involved with, and you really were able to live that journey of safety. I know the last time we were on a call, you shared the little statue that the crew at Anglo had given you when you came in as taking on the role, and just said, this is no longer acceptable. Safety is our first priority. And I think you've still got that somewhere close to hand as well. But Mark, do you want to reflect on how leaders can address complexity, how we can get that ownership of the critical controls and understanding where it needs to be, where it's with people at the front line who can make a difference, without putting them in a situation where we're lining them up to fail, leaving them with awful equipment and the wrong work environment?
Yeah, thanks, Peter. I guess there are a couple of perspectives I deal with, because that complexity issue is a big one, particularly in the world we're in. But I should start with one point. When I first started in South Africa with Anglo Gold Ashanti, and we're in the deep mines, Anglo American was recording fatality every 5 days. So we had 70 fatal incidents, and this is in 2007. And Anglo Gold Ashanti was literally half of those fatalities across the globe. And so the key change, I think, in our first few conversations was thinking about people and really caring, because we'd become almost immune to an incident every 5 days. It just becomes, oh, we've just had another fatality. And then you talk about the rest of the day. And I said, guys, this is a life. This is a family. This is, and so the issue of caring and being connected to the workforce became something that we took a bit of time to reflect on. And in doing that, it really did change the nature of the conversations in the workplace. And the key question I put to everybody is, would you want one of your family members to work in this mine? And I remember after we had a fatality, we lost 4 members in Pening, a bit like Darren's Bronzewing experience. And I asked that question, and not one person put their hand up to say they'd want their kids working at that mine. I said, there's your answer. Until we have every operation where you'd be prepared to have your kids work there, then, we're not in the right place. And that took a lot of work to get right. And I won't go through that, but a point I make is caring and really connecting to people and hearing what they're saying and what their concerns are is first and foremost. A really important issue is becoming, I think, more and more important as we talk as an industry. We've got critical minerals, so the world's wanting more materials. The good news is we've suddenly become more popular. People want more production from certain operations, and our discoveries and our opening of new mines is not going to keep up with demand. So the pressure's going to be on operators. Each mine, generally, if you're looking at metals and precious metals, mining 40 metres deeper every year. And even in bulk operations, you're mining with more complexity and more challenges. And so the risk profile in our businesses are going up. So whilst we've made great improvements and we've flattened those statistics, the problem is we've flattened them. We've got to go again because the risk profile, in my view, is going to accelerate based on what I've observed in all of the work we do around the globe. And as Darren and Peter know, I work with Tony O'Neill. We're partners in a business and we do a lot of asset review work. And what we're noticing right across the board is people aren't thinking about the new risks that they're going to have to encounter as they go to depths they've never worked, or they introduce new mining methods that have got totally different parameters. And we're going to need to develop those new mining methods, which will have a whole range of new risks. So my fear is it won't flatten and continue to flatten. It's actually going to go back up again because the fundamental or underlying risks in the business will increase. And so to be ahead of that, you've got to change the mindset, and we've got to take the industry to a different place in the way we're thinking about our businesses and think ahead of those changes we have to make. So the need for change management on steroids, in my view, is becoming a real imperative. And I think the ability to talk about that and maybe think those issues through as an industry is a real opportunity to provide a new starting point for the challenges that we know are coming. And we're seeing some indications in businesses around the world with some of those rates starting to deteriorate. If we don't do it now, we're going to be behind the 8 ball, and we're going to let down literally the people that work in the industry. And as leaders, our priority, our responsibility is to make sure that we're leading those conversations in safety and health and well-being as well.
That's a powerful message, mate. And as you quite rightly point out, if the leaders aren't on board and moving this forward, that they will get mowed down by the weight of public opinion. Like no board, no group of shareholders is going to willingly be part of an organisation that is hurting people and getting work and having their trend declining. I don't think that's even vaguely tenable. So that's a really good amplifier for saying why we need to get involved, why we need to work together, and why we need that combination across everyone who will be at a group, at an event like the Mine Health and Safety Conference, where we're going to bring regulators, technical people, operations people. We'll probably try and get some people shop floor as well, but try and get that cross section, as well as bringing in a bunch of students who are going to be the leaders of tomorrow. We need those people in the room and actively participating, because some of the format that we're working through with the conference is going to be around a combined conference/workshop. So we've got the after lunch, which is normally arsenic hour, in terms of if you ever jump up to speak to a group of people after they've got a gut full of food, you're almost certain to watch people. If they don't yawn at you, they'll at least be a long way away from where you're at. So after lunch is workshop time, because that gets small groups of people working together on problems that brought into the room by leaders in the industry who understand what's happening there. And we're really looking to get that sort of the energy of a group of people together to produce some really possibly earth-shattering, but certainly it'll be some leading ideas. Like you get that brains trust together. That's the real goal, is get people together, having those conversations, moving together, identifying who they can work with after the conference ends, so that everyone goes back and makes a difference. So it's a good focus point. Things are okay, but not acceptable now. If we don't change, we will get worse, and that's completely unacceptable. We're already unacceptable. We don't want to become completely unacceptable. So look, I jumped on the soapbox then, and Darren, you've been sitting there quietly and keeping the powder dry. Is there anything you want to bring in or amplify around that subject?
I think we've heard some great key aspects of where the industry is at today, what we hope to achieve in this conference, and shining a light on something that is pretty well, I won't say it's gone unnoted, but certainly if it's been noted, we haven't done enough about it. This is the opportunity to really flesh those issues out, as you said, but bringing the team of people together, bringing the leadership in, helping those who are truly accountable and have obligations to meet, helping them to understand the role that they play in actually making this whole drive work and driving us below the 3.4 number. Because it won't happen just from a bunch of safety people running around writing a few new procedures, that's for sure.
No, that's not going to move the needle.
No.
Yeah, brilliant. So some of the other ideas that we had on our run sheet of things we were going to talk around were sort of terms around accountability, organisation, technical excellence, and applying resources. I think that if we go there, though, it's going to deflect away from the real gravitas of this conversation. I think what Mark's helped us capture is this is a real issue. It's emerging. It's going to become bigger. We have to get in and act, and we'll act across those multiple areas. Like some of the thinkers in the safety space have given us some pointers as to where to go, like around people, equipment, work environment, supporting systems. We know what we need to do. We just need to think better about it, plan for it, implement it, and do it in a way that gives ownership where it needs to exist. So people know that they've got the accountability and the authority to act where they should, and understand where the limits are, where they should not be acting to change things. So, Mark, your comment about it's the biggest change the industry's faced for the last 30 plus years is it's really sounding a bell in my mind, saying this is something that needs to change, and we can put the right group of people together to talk it through. We'll come out with ideas and that momentum to really make a difference, I think, which it needs to happen. Like this, it's a slow trend down, but if we don't arrest it, the trend will be realised, and people will start to call us to account. And we want to have a good, like, hand on heart, be able to say this is the best that we can do, and we're doing it. It's not about saying, yeah, make all the platitudes, talk critical control, but don't really own it and live it. Like that's the fear I've got, is that we embrace a new shiny object and we don't actually take it on board and integrate it into our systems to help reduce complexity and move us forward as an industry. So look, what I might do is bring us to sort of closing comments and final words, and sort of get people to be as excited as we are about the upcoming conference. So I'll turn to you last, Mark, if you like. And so Darren, do you want to have sort of a few closing comments on this?
I was just trying to gather those thoughts into some sort of succinct comment. I think it's time. If we don't grab this, we know an awful lot now. We understand about critical controls. We understand that these psychosocial issues are playing a role. We understand that the industry is getting more complex and risk profiles are rising. We can see all that sitting here having this chat. We've got to translate that, and I hope people really take the opportunity to get involved and be part of this next wave. So people look back on those days that were 3.4, and whilst at the moment we say it's unacceptable, maybe it would be fantastic if it became unimaginable that we were ever at 3.4.
Yeah, powerful words. Thanks, Darren. And sort of my closing comments are just to thank Mark again for being such a heartfelt ambassador for the conference as we move closer to the date where it's running. So, Mark, do you want to bring us into land and make some final closing comments?
Yeah, thanks. And thanks, Darren. Look, I think there are a few points to make, and I'll keep them short. One, society is starting to understand how important the mining industry is, and the fact that we have a thing called critical minerals. What people don't generally understand is if you're short a particular product, then it becomes critical. So almost every commodity becomes critical at some stage. We know that as an industry, but the fact that we have that conversation publicly means the community more broadly is starting to understand mining does do something and does supply minerals that help us live the lives we want to live. And that's really important. And we're going to be right in the public side. At the same time, demand for a whole range of products is increasing rapidly. And in many cases, we're going to be short key materials, which puts more pressure on operations. And given many years of constraints in terms of permitting and processes, mines are getting deeper. We need different mining methods, new processes, new approaches. Lots of change is going to have to be navigated, and we've got to go up, not one level, a number of levels, to make sure that we protect people and look after people. And if we don't get that right, the community trust that we're starting to build will be gone in a minute. So lots of work to be done, lots to play for, and it's all about people and looking after people. Third point, And an important one, somebody said to me, oh, well, AI will fix everything. No, it won't. AI is a tool to help us think about and look at things differently and give us options in terms of how we might deal with stuff. And I go back to a conversation I was in with a few groups that are involved in block cave, El Teniente, Grasberg, Cadia, and other operations where there have been incidents, and then thinking about new approaches. And we talked about various AI tools. And that's the point I make. You've got various tools that are being developed that can help us think differently. Let's use the tools, but let's not forget it's still people that make the decisions and have to implement these changes. So let's help each other through that change process. And I think the conference is a great opportunity to compare notes and support each other in navigating what will be a significant change process through the industry over the next 5 to 10 years. So I think it's a great opportunity to come together and work out how we could navigate this together for each other.
Brilliant. Mark, I couldn't think of a better way to wind up this fireside chat. Darren, Mark, thank you so much for taking the time today. And that's a wrap.
Thanks, Pete. Thanks, Mark.